Welcome, everybody, to TPI, the Total Podcast Idiots show, where we cover anything and everything related to hardwood. Simply said, the best website ever created in the history of the internet. I'm idiot number one, Robert, and that's idiot number two over there, Andrew. Andrew, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm doing really great. Our last video had some good feedback. We appreciate all the new subscribers and comments, definitely. So yeah, it's amazing to think that this is our fourth video now. And as you can see, we have a special guest today. And so this is Bridger.
Hey
Oh,
guys.
hey, thanks for joining us today.
Of course, I was pretty excited when I saw what you guys were doing. I've had the idea kick around in my head before of doing something similar, but never took the leap. So very cool.
Yeah, it's been fun. So we're so glad you can join us. And if you don't know, Bridger is the president of Huntington University in the hardwood universe. That's one of the best teams historically. We've looked at the history. It's been awesome to study your team and all your rivals too, of course. But you, I think, are a bit of a special case, and we'll get into that a bit later. Um, yeah, so we'll just start it right off. How did you find hardwood?
Yeah, I was thinking about this question because I'm going to go like way back because to the winding road for how I got to hardwood. It kind of starts with like the dorkiest possible thing, which is in college, I had some friends drag me into playing this online text-based like fantasy war game called Legends of Elveron that I won't go into all of that, but there was this other group of guys from Ohio. I was in college with a bunch of guys in Indiana. There was this other group of guys from Ohio who were playing Buzzer Beater, who we got to know through that game. And then a couple of us started to play Buzzer Beater with them. I actually took a team to the NBBA in Buzzer Beater, which if you haven't played it won't make any sense, but like way back years ago, probably like 2007, 2008, got sick of that game, didn't play. That's a basketball online text-based sim that's been around a long time.
Yeah,
So
I've heard
play
of
it.
it.
I don't play it anymore. It's not a bad game. But anyway, I didn't play any games like that for a long time. Life went other directions. So I actually went back and started playing Buzzer Beater again, like 2016 probably. And somewhere along the way, I just started. Probably a bigger baseball fan than anything. So this is how it
Yes,
takes
us
me to
too.
hardwood. Is yeah, I found my Cubs hat for this. I uh, I found Broken Bat, just stumbled on it. And I assume you guys know about Broken Bat, but Broken Bat is actually Steve's previous game, and at least the one where I found. And so I've been playing that for a number of years. My team in Broken Bat is the Muncie Flyers, which I'm just like languishing in Division 4 and have been for a long time. I peaked at 3 in that game after starting with the team in 6, and I just can't find pitching. So this isn't a podcast about Broken Bat, but I cannot find starting pitching to save my life. I've been trying for like 20 seasons,
Oh
and
my gosh.
it's been a disaster. I don't want to go on a podcast to talk more about Broken Bat, but so anyway, I actually got in on the beta of hardwood because I don't remember what user, but there was a Broken Bat user who found the hardwood beta before admin Steve was ready to send it out, just digging around files and started posting about it in the forums over at Broken Bat. And so a bunch of us got in from Broken Bat, got in like right away. And I actually had Ball State, which I have connections to in real life, initially in the beta for about one beta season. And the history of those beta seasons, I don't know if you guys know this, isn't in any history you can find. He did like a hard reset to the game. So a bunch of us had like a 3 or 4 season sim test run. A lot of things changed from it, but I know, one of my secrets to success is just that I got to practice for a few seasons before the game started. So anyway, found it. Steve was kind enough to put my alma mater in the game. So Huntington University is not initially one of the Hardwood teams. I don't remember what school he removed from the game, so apologies to whoever they were. But he basically took like one of the lowest ranked D6 teams, reflavored them to the all the real facts about the school I went to in college, which is a small liberal arts school in Indiana. That actually has a good basketball team and a big history. In real life, the Huntington University the current team is coached by Corey Alford, who's the son of Steve Alford. So there's some like real, and Steve Platt, who's a name probably nobody knows, who's like one of the all-time leading college scorers, but he played at an NAIA school, so he's not like a master name. But Huntington has a little bit of a basketball history that's notable in some ways. So it's really fun for me to log in and see Huntington University, which is a school of like 1,500 students, in that list of D1 schools, rotating from year to year. So it's been fun.
Just to piggyback off that actually real quick. So you mentioned that Steve had to make an actual change to incorporate Hardwood. Now, obviously, as someone who picked up the game this year, we see an expansive list of schools, even some schools we've never even heard of. Yeah. So is that something that he's progressively been adding to the game over the season?
I think, I'm not going to speak for Steve. I believe the list is still the original list. I think we started with 6 divisions, and he just swapped somebody out for Huntington. I don't think anything's been added since then. I think it's been six divisions all along.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. So I think you gave some pretty sufficient background in terms of why you chose Huntington, an alma mater there. So that's pretty cool. We obviously love to see when teams take their alma mater schools. It means more in that case,
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and if I was looking back through, I guess it's been basically 3 years now, which it doesn't seem that long that Hardwood has been around, because it feels like I was playing Broken Bat for like eons before that and never succeeding. But we're about to hit 3 years of the Hardwood launch, which is pretty cool.
It's actually wild to think, because we started playing in March, right? Was March?
May. I think
May. Yeah, in May. Yeah. We started playing in May, and it seems like an eternity already, just because of how fast you have turnover in seasons and how fast you get guys through.
Yeah, what year is it in Hardwood? 2016, and we started at the turn of the millennium. So it's wow.
Yeah, I didn't know that he erased like the previous history and then started over. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, and I don't remember how many seasons it was. It was a handful though that started, and like most of the players in that beta were all Broken Bat players pretty much, because those were the only people who would have known about it at that point. So
yeah.
So out of curiosity,
I thought you meant the computer generated players actually, but
oh no. I mean the users who got in on the beta. And it was all of the. This is a whole different set of people. Now, some of the high-level users are the same, and I'm not a high-level user in Broken Bat at all. But it was a lot of the like big names from that did all the beta testing and gave a lot of feedback. And some of them, so like in Hardwood, the team Worcester Polytechnic Institute that maybe was before your guys' time that they got to Conference 1 or Legends, or I think it's called Legends in Hardwood. And they were like the first team ever to get a double 5-star recruiting year. And he went from D6 to D1 like right away and then quit the game. And the user's name is like Rock something. He's like one of the all-time Broken Bat users too. It's a lot of those same guys. So
I dabbled in Broken Bat, so I know it wasn't for me.
It's frustrating. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's just too much of a commitment. So you mentioned that you started with Ball State, but then went to Huntington for obvious reasons. But did you ever think about staying at Ball State, or was it obvious to you wanted to go?
Once Steve put Huntington in the game, like that was a no-brainer for me. When it comes to college basketball, like I probably am an IU fan, if anything. But somebody had beat me to IU in the beta, or else I maybe never would have asked Steve about Huntington and probably would have been happy with that. But yeah, once it wasn't going to be IU, I was on Steve pretty much right away in messages. I'm just like, I know this is a pain, but is this possible? And I don't know. I know you guys talked a little bit about Steve, and it's not that I know him that well. I just know him as a user on 2 games, but like He's amazing. I can't even tell you how many hours of my life the last few years I've spent on Broken Bat and Hardwood, and it's something he does as like a labor of love. Steve's the man.
Yeah, shout out to Steve for, for Hardwood alone, all of the work that goes into Hardwood, and the fact that he has Broken Bat on top of that. This entire podcast obviously is possible because of Steve. So shout out to Steve for all of his hard work and dedication.
Yeah, very much.
I don't think any more could be said there. So jumping into, what sort of advice would you give to a new president, somebody who just took over team, is new to the game?
Yeah, and there's so much that could go into that. But I think as I reflect back, and so I'll add some context. Maybe I'm not even going to remember when, 6 or 7 seasons ago. I know there's a lot of users that have 2 teams. I tried it out for a bit. I took over the Delaware Fighting Blue Hens for
Great
like
name.
3 seasons. And then I realized I didn't really want to run 2 teams, but I did like 2 recruiting classes with Delaware. And then the user who took them over got them up to like Conference 3, I think, with the recruiting classes I had brought in. And so the advice I would give from that experience of like trying a new team again pretty recently is recruit definitely in region and preferably in state. And like, there's no need to be that ambitious with your recruiting as a new team. Just like find pot 11s who are not highly contested, so you don't have to dump a million points in, and just fill your team with like good build pot 11s. Don't get into big recruiting fights. Start to recruit ahead future years, because like that's the key. And you can do that really quick if your early recruiting classes, you're getting guys for like 5 or 10 contacts, because you're not, your eyes don't get bigger than your stomach on what you're trying to bring in. It's not hard to, this is going to sound really vain probably, but like it's really not hard to put a team together that wins a D6 and start climbing. Like 5, it already starts to get somewhat competitive, for sure. But take a D6 team. No need to go crazy with your recruits. Just get like solid 11 pot players in, start building up those future recruiting classes, get aggressive on like freshman and sophomore high school recruits, because that long-term recruiting, you actually have a chance to win some fights, where if you're coming in on seniors trying to fight people, you're just throwing points, in the trash at that point. So that'd be my number one thing is recruiting is like 90% of this. It really wasn't until Legends that like I even messed with tactics at all, pretty much. And so like now I have to, especially like this year, my team has some serious weaknesses that I'm trying to like game plan around. But at lower levels, find some good standard tactics that are working for you, recruit solid players. My opinion, you'll find people who differ from this on the Discord and stuff, but my opinion is redshirt everybody, no matter what. And because that 5th year, like the extra year of development, I don't know why you wouldn't want it. And so, yeah, those would be some of the basics for new players. Is like redshirt everybody to get the extra year of development, recruit players that you can actually get. Don't get into fights with higher level, high prestige schools for big name recruits and dump 80 points in nothing. And then just find some tactics that are working for you. There's multiple ways to win games in the tactics, but once you find something that's working, stick to it and ride it until it's not working for you anymore. And like that should be enough to get you off to a good start and have some success.
All right. Yeah, Rob could have used some of that advice, I feel, early on.
I sort of went after some big fish pretty quickly.
Oh, hey, I have my own horror stories about bad recruiting decisions too. This is stuff I learned over time, not right away.
I mean, Rob, you won some of them early on, and then he kind of got too ambitious, I think, with some, and it was always like, oh, I won this guy though, and I couldn't say anything.
I was like league level 6 and I pulled a 4-star and a 5-star, and I was like, oh,
Awesome.
I'm the bomb. And then I wasn't the bomb.
Well, that's it, right? Like it's a game about depth. It's not a game about one guy. Now, it's not to say that shoot, as the owner of Jeremy Harvey, who took me to, back-to-back Final Fours, one of which I did not have a super high TPI team compared to some of the others. Like, there are those, but you have to luck into those. You're not going to be able to identify who those players are when they're still in high school. So like, your plan shouldn't be mortgage everything for one guy who's going to carry me to the top. It's got to be a filled out roster. I'm honestly like, I should be better about recruiting specifically for positions, because like, I know how to put a team together, but I also just find guys I like and recruit them. So but there's a lot of strategy into building the full team the right way, and the teams that are really successful, like year after year, have guys that make sense in positions instead of like shoehorning players into a spot that they don't fit that well. So.
I see. Yeah, I see that a lot on the Discord. Like, oh, this guy, I'll just have to put here because I don't have any other place to put them.
Well, and
But
to
they're
be
good,
fair, like I went to a Final Four with a point guard who I recruited as an all defense small forward. And so sometimes you just find yourself in that spot of like, I failed to get myself a real point guard in these 3 recruiting classes, so we're just going to try guys until something works, right? And that's I think that's the other thing too, is like, all that I said about it's important to plan. It's also important to like not get too locked into one idea and to try different guys in different spots. And you end up, a lot of like my thoughts about the game come from those seasons where like I didn't have somebody that fit what I needed. And then I tried a few different guys and then realized something was working, and then tried to go back and say, okay, what was I, why is that guy working in that spot when he doesn't fit the model of what I thought he needed? And I think that point guard I'm talking about, Justin Aiello, was the player's name. And he was like I think it was less than 10 on like shooting and range. And his passing was like 10 or 11, and his handling was under 10. Like, this is not a point guard, but he was like, he was like 18 perimeter defense, 13 interior defense, and like 6'4", 6'5", and long arms. And he turned the ball over a ton, but also my team was like really defense focused too. And a lot of the games I won, was holding teams to bad offensive performances compared to what they were doing against other teams. And so, that's what I mean about there's different ways to approach this, right? You can, if your team is the defensive minded team and your point guard is bigger than a lot of the other point guards and has really high defense ratings, he can be a little bit of a liability on offense, and it can still be a successful team. So.
Yeah, I think we've started to experience just like throwing some guys in some places and just getting, being really surprised, I'd say, yeah.
I have an entire team full of guys that are playing out of position with my all 7-foot lineup team. So
nice. Which team is that?
Texas A&M Kingsville Javelinas.
Did I play you?
You did play me, and you destroyed me.
Yeah. Okay. I remember, because when you said that, I was like, wait, I played some team that like everybody in the lineup was 6'10" plus in that.
You crushed me. You crushed me. But to be fair, we are excelling this season, and we've beat a number of D1 teams, like league level 3 and league level 4.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, you scored 36 points against me.
For reference, he scored 74. So
no. Hey, that's a really low number for my team too. Though my team, I'm really not. I'm just hoping I survive in Legends this year. It's going to be rough, but so. Yeah, no, I love those like concept teams. I think it's a lot of fun. I think if I were ever going to actually do a second team, I'd be more interested in doing something like that than trying to climb again. So.
Yeah, it's definitely fun.
Yeah, I know we threw around some ideas, and that's what Rob came up with. I don't think like a all short lineup would really like work in the same way.
all under 6 foot. Yeah, no, that's one of the things that I think, especially the last few seasons, I'm realizing is more and more important, especially at higher levels, is it gets harder and harder to get away with guys who don't have the size for the spot. So like I had some really, really good like D4 and D3 teams with a 6'8" center, Albert Butler, who played in the NBA for a few years after his hardwood career. Though he retired after like 3 seasons, made me so mad. But yeah, with a 6'8" center and a 6'6" power forward, and had some like really awesome teams. But it gets harder and harder to get away with that the higher you go up, I think. So yeah, I don't think the all 5'9" team would do much.
I guess it need to be a lot of shooting and everything else other than size.
Well, and you'd have to play like -5 defense every game, or else get out rebounded by 40.
Oh gosh,
but yeah,
definitely. So you talked about taking Huntington from lower levels to D1 now, or to Legends. So you started out in LL6, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, wow. So now you're in Legends. And so talk about that climb, and was there peaks and valleys, or was it just steady?
Yeah, no, I spent 5 seasons in 6 to start.
Oh, wow.
And I think one of the things, and like that didn't bug me, and I think it came from Broken Bat, since that was, my most recent experience. It's really hard to climb there, and like it takes seasons of planning. Even more so in that game than in this one. In this one, you're only on a 5-year cycle, no matter what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
But in Broken Bat, it takes, it can take 10 or 12 seasons of planning if you're drafting high school kids to go all the way through the minors. And so I think I had that mindset right away with this, of just like, bring it, I'm not gonna be a threat until my first batch of recruits are seniors, and it's going to be a while before that happens. So those first like 5 seasons, it was more about sitting around planning out recruiting cycles, trying to decide how that was going to work long term for my team, because I thought, my only experience coming off Broken Bat of like, I've been playing this game for a million seasons and I'm not anywhere close to D1. Like, it wasn't in my mind when I started this that like, I'm going to race to D1 and figure that out. It was more like, I need to build this foundation, get this like recruiting ahead thing going. And that's going to take a few seasons. And honestly, like, it's not until like probably 2014 Game Time, which is just here real recently, that I'm actually now like fully recruiting freshmen. Like as soon as the new recruits pop up, like I'm already at medium and high on sophomores, juniors, and seniors, and I can immediately start putting points in freshmen. It takes a long time and some patience to do that, but I think to like really get a team rolling, that's the long-term goal of where you want to be. So anyway, I spent a long time in D6, but then like once I was ready to climb, it went pretty quick. And this sort of takes me to another topic, but before I go there, I was like 1 season in 5, got up to 4 on like that first push. And I do think it's kind of like that, right? Like so that first push, then I like stabilized in 4. I think I dropped down to 5 for a season. As I look back in 2009, I dropped down to 5, but then I went first place in 5, 4, and 3. And then I actually finished 4th my first season in 2 in like my off year. It was like a really fluky year, and my team was way under skilled for the level, and I had a lot of like close lucky wins, and I finished 4th, but not actually close to promoting. I think I was like, it was one of those seasons where like the top 3 teams all had like 25 wins, and then I was the 4th place team with like 18. But yeah, then I never dropped out of 2, and like the probably just whatever has happened to me in this game, the most excited I ever was my second season in 2. I was in like 12th place going into the last game. I'm actually going to look at this and get this right. So it was 2013. I was a game out behind multiple teams, and I beat. So on the last day of the regular season, was sure I was going to demote. I was playing a Lewis and Clark team, which was like on its way climbing to Legends, but they had already clinched and he played a couple young guys. So I ended up beating him by like 10 points on the last day of the season, and like 2 other teams lost. And so when I logged in that day, I had already like made my plans for demoting and like whatever. And I log in that day and see that my team won and just like start clicking through scores. And the 2 other teams I needed to lose like lost fluky games. So I'm in the Discord just like, holy crap. Like I didn't demote, I'm still in 2. And that was a really cool moment because I knew that was a year where like I had no seniors and 1 junior and 2 sophomores and 4 freshmen, right? So it's like only going to improve from there. And so that was when I knew like I'm actually going to get to Legends with like multiple competitive years of the way my team cycles. And so yeah, that's kind of, you know, and so that's the part where I was saying it's kind of another topic of there's a lot of guys in the Discord who will give the advice to newer players and to each other. And I don't necessarily disagree with this, but the kind of consistent advice that's out there is like manage your recruiting classes so you're getting like 2 or 3 guys every season, right? Balance it out. And I'm not 100% sure that I think that's the best approach to the game. I think if you have imbalanced recruiting classes, it gives you the chance for special teams, right? But I think if it's balanced, of course you're going to be more consistent. You have a chance of having a good team every year. But if everybody's doing that, like how do you get an advantage on those teams? It's you have some years where you've got 4 seniors and 6 juniors, right? And so that's how my team fell out. I'm not saying that that exact balance is the right one, because for me, it's just because I'm impatient and I can't leave scholarships open. So I just fill them all. And there's probably a more optimized way to do it, but I'm not convinced that like an even balance is actually the best chance if you want to have great teams. And with the level it's at the top now, like you have to have a pretty special team to want to win Legends, which I haven't done. Stupid Butler on the last day of the season 2 seasons ago, you know, nipped me again. So yeah.
Yeah, I've thought about that too. I kind of have listened a lot to like the balancing out the recruiting classes, but then I've thought about, well, if you do have smaller numbers, then you can really target one special guy, right?
Well, and in my cycle, I have a 0 recruit year every 5th year, which makes the game incredibly boring for that one season out of every 5 when I don't have any seniors to recruit. But that one's immediately followed by a 1-man recruiting class every time. So I always,
wow.
you know, every few years I have that one guy and I have an entire season ahead of time with no seniors to go after to try it. And then I never end up recruiting like a big name guy on that one because I just get more excited about the 2-man class and the 4-man class coming after it. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to just change your disposition towards, you know, oh, I want to focus on, you know, even past that, right? So you mentioned 2014 as kind of like a turning point, right? For your team, for your process with recruiting and competitiveness. Would you say that that was like the year, was maybe before that when you started to see things?
You know, I think the start of like actually the biggest turning point for my team, because like those early seasons in D6 and D5, I was climbing with these 2 other teams, and it was Western Washington and Ohio. And I don't know, I haven't kept like close tabs of them, but like they were the bane of my existence in the early season. I was, you know, it was always like the 3 of us, and I happened to be in low level leagues with 2 other like really active, strong recruiting users, which is part of why I didn't get out of 6 that quick or immediately out of 5. And so those were kind of the early years. But I think the big thing for me, turning point wise, was there's a particular recruiting class of mine. And it was it was the first time that I really got ahead of the recruiting. And I kind of picked out these 4 sophomores. I think they were high school sophomores at the time, and started putting points in them. And these guys, it's I can start throwing names out from my team. It's not like people know my teams that well, but it was the class of, looks like they all signed on April of 2006. So it was around that period, right? 7 or 8 seasons, so 7 seasons into the game. It was the 4-man class in my recruiting cycle, and I signed, I think it was 4 4-stars. And two of them were 13 pot, and they were the first 2 13 pots I'd ever gotten. And one of them was Albert Butler, who I've already mentioned once, who was this 6'8" guy that I thought was going to be a small forward, but ended up starting at center for 2 years, just because I tried to recruit one big man in that class, and it was something Grady, and he ended up going to Butler and like winning a national championship. So that's annoying. But Butler's the bane of my existence in this game. I'm still sad that you guys probably saw their president left the team, because I think he got bored of being better than all of us. But he and Evansville are my nightmares. But he took my only big man I was recruiting that year. So I still had this really good recruiting class, but they were 6'8", 6'5", 6'6", and 6'2". And yet they were going to be the 4 best players on my team. And the year before that, I had picked up a point guard, right, who was going to be the other strong player on the team. So I was kind of locked into, like, these are going to be my 5. But those guys, because of the way my cycle works, my 4-man class is kind of the key of every cycle, because it goes, I don't know if this is going to make sense the way I'm saying this, but basically I recruit 0 the one year, then 1 the next year, then 2 the next year, then 4. So the 4 is kind of the key, because they're going to have multiple years as starters. So that's the class I focus on. I want those. I'm interested in pot more than anything on those guys, because since they're going to start multiple years, they're going to max out. And so, like, I need them to be high pot guys, because basically they're in the starting lineup. At least 2 of them are in the starting lineup as redshirt freshmen. And so, like, next year is one of those years for me. And I had a really good recruiting class again last year. So I'm pretty excited about it. But I've got 4 guys I'm redshirting right now who are
like
all
1
in
5-star, 2 4-stars.
Yeah. And so, like, the first time I did what I'm doing right now was that 2006 recruiting class, where Albert Butler is like the big name to remember. And hopefully there's some teams out there who remember that name as a 4-year starter who I won multiple. And that's also that stretch I mentioned earlier in my team's history, where I went first place, 4th place in 5 4 3 2. Those were pretty much his 4 years as a starter. So as I look back, that's where, like, the switch flipped from I'm just one of many, like, reasonably strong teams in a low level to I picked up a recruiting class. They were all at like 140, 150 SI their sophomore year, and I just steamrolled for a couple of years. And that was it. Yeah. And then I was able to repeat that again with the next time I got to that 4-man recruiting class is where I got Donald Gorman. And that's probably the main name from that group. But that team went to 3 straight D1 Final Fours with that recruiting class. So, and like, that's my hope again for the 4 guys I'm redshirting right now, is that they're kind of the next version of the 4-man core that starts for multiple years, maxes out their SI, and has like 2 peak top of the game years. And so, yeah, that's how my team works.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, it is definitely different than how I have planned.
Yeah.
For me, but I mean, it's definitely interesting to.
Well, I don't think there's only one way to do it.
Right.
You know, that's something I kind of just stumbled into that has been working for me. And that's why, you know, when you talk about turning points, like, here I am 10 seasons later because of that recruiting class, still doing the same thing. And that's why I'd point to that as kind of, you know, I saw that happen. And I was just like, okay, how do I do that again?
Right.
Yeah, and you mentioned my recruiting class from this past year. That's actually the first 5-star I've ever gotten, is DeMarcus O'Donnell, who is a 5-star, and he wasn't 5-star until the last star update of the recruiting cycle last year. Like I wasn't,
Oh,
I wasn't recruiting him as a 5-star. He just happened to be, and that's the same deal with the guy I'm recruiting this year, who's a 5-star that I'm in a fight on, Gus Chastain. He wasn't a 5-star when I started recruiting him. I'm actually annoyed when guys pop up that much because, you know, it means they're going to get more attention and people are going to try and fight me. My favorite thing in hardwood is when I get to senior year of recruiting and it still says none next to my guy, because I know I've been recruiting him since freshman year and nobody's gonna stock up enough points in 1 year to outweigh the, I don't know the math of the game, but from what I've seen, when you've got like a several season advantage, it's pretty much impossible to lose the guy. So
I think that's some
got it,
pretty overwhelming evidence there that you don't
Yeah.
need to recruit all 5-stars to be successful in the game.
no, the first 5-star I ever intentionally recruited is, if you look at my recruiting board currently, there's a sophomore named Miles Gray, who is the first guy ever that when I started recruiting him, he was a 5-star. Now, I don't know if that's true. I may have lost some 5-stars back like really early in the game that I went after, but kind of since I knew what I was doing.
Got it. Yeah. Yeah. Maybe I've been too early to jump on freshmen now. I got to low on the #1 player in the freshman class.
Yeah.
And it's taken me a lot of contacts.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I got to low like relatively okay, but then like I put more in and haven't really moved.
Well, and that's an interesting thing. I'm pretty sure because obviously I'm recruiting freshmen and sophomores a lot with the way my team's set up a lot now. And you definitely, like, I'm sure, and I've heard other people talk about it too, like you hit caps. And so, and then the cap goes up when they get to the next level. But like without going too much into it, I've had freshmen who, they hit low at 3 contacts because they're in state, and my team's really high prestige. So like I get some stuff, sometimes I hit that low, like 3 or 4 contacts in.
Right.
And then they hit like low plus at another 3 contacts. Then they hit low plus plus at another 4 contacts. And then I put 20 more points in and they don't go up, right? And it's like, okay, there's definitely something going on there, that's wired into the game intentionally. So
Yeah, I'd heard about that. I never experienced it before. So yeah, good to know.
Well,
good to know.
and I would generally stop putting points in somebody at that point and just wait until the next season to put points in. But there's a lot we don't know about the game, and that's the thing about hardwood is like, if you put more points in when that cap goes up for sophomore year, are they worth just as much as if you didn't hit the cap? Maybe they are, right? So there may be no reason to stop.
Right. Yeah. Do they
Yeah.
carry over just
Right. Does it
know.
recalculate based on the number of contacts you have when it hits sophomore year, or are those points less effective? And I know, Steve can answer those questions. He's not going to, and he shouldn't, because that's the fun of this. But,
Yeah.
Yeah, we need to leave some things pretty vague.
Yep.
I described to Rob once, like, it's just this addicting feeling, this rush where it's like, well, what if I just put 1 more contact in? Will that be it? That increases the level.
Oh yeah, just every day, right? Like you've only got the 2 points to spend, and I just want to see the guy I put those in on today tick from the level he's on to the next one. And so it's just like the most depressing part of the day, right? When it's just like recruiting contact didn't go up, recruiting contact didn't go up. Man, I gotta wait 24 hours to do this again.
The most depressing part of the day is when you check the recruiting news and the guy that you expected to sign has not signed yet. Especially if he has eager to commit early and the period's almost over and still no signing.
I play that game every day of like trying to like make it as dramatic for myself as possible, of like make sure I'm waiting to log in until after it's updated and hit alerts first to see if it says, and that's like my moment every day is like, come on, let there be 2 notifications, not 1, 2 notifications, not 1. And then some days you do that and it's like 2 notifications, 9-day injury for my best player. Right.
Oh man, frustrating.
Yeah. I've got to say, this season is killing me. I'm recruiting 6 guys. We are in update like 18, and I've got no commitments yet.
And a lot of
And
those
I'm
guys
ahead.
don't have.
I'm ahead on all but one of them.
Yeah, and a lot of those guys don't have any contests on them.
I think that I'm down to only 2 of them that
Oh,
have
yeah.
no fights, but
The rest of them low.
the 3 guys who have people on low, a lot of those didn't pop up until this season. So like, there's no guarantees. Like, there's lots of horror stories in the Discord of like, I was on very high, have been recruiting this guy for 2 years, and somebody who was on low signed him today. So like, that stuff is possible because there's, from years of playing Broken Bat, there is random chance built into everything. You can be sure of that in this game, but hopefully, not too much of that happens.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's how I got my 5-star. I was actually a whole level lower than Arkansas State on the 5-star guy, and then when he signed for me, I was like, huh? And I was so confused. I was like, hey, the random lottery like fell in my direction today.
Is this on Santa Clara?
Santa Clara, yeah, it's an international
Nice.
player. Yeah,
Nice.
so I was pretty excited for that.
The 4-star in Santa Clara he has too. I think you were low. You were a level
I wasn't gonna
below
mention
too.
that. I was at medium plus on this 4-star guy, right? And he had like 6 other teams on him, Cole Brown.
Yeah.
And there's like 2 teams at high, and so I stopped recruiting him because I figured I was wasting points. And then like 7 or 8 updates after I stopped recruiting him, I got him.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, I've had some beats that felt pretty bad, where like I just kept putting, because I had the one guy I knew I wanted and there was competition, and I kept dumping points in them every update for a whole season. There was a guy, I think his name was, he didn't end up on my team, so it's hard to remember, but I think it was like Rhett Murphy, and he ended up at Notre Dame and like wasn't even that good, but I probably had 90 points in the guy just because I really needed a big man, and he was the only big guy that was still on my board that I had any points in. So I was just like dumping and dumping and dumping points in, and to no avail. And I think sometimes that's just how it goes. Is I don't know if there's a random chance that a guy just doesn't like your team. Because every once in a while there's that recruiting, you're recruiting in-state, all your other in-state guys are like going up a level every 5 points. And then there's the one guy who like, it takes 20 points for every level, but everything else is the same. The one in my recruiting class I'm working on, there's a guy, I think it's Reginald Jones, who's like a 4-star guard that looks really good. And all 6 of the guys I'm recruiting are from Indiana, and it took me literally double the points for every level to get him to the level of the other 5. And I don't know the reason for that.
Yeah, it definitely seems like some guys just don't like, they don't want to play for your team for whatever reason. I haven't figured it out. I mean, everyone thinks it's like the guys that are ahead of them on the depth chart, but even then some of it seems kind of random.
For sure. And I mostly just trust that like my recruiting plan is going to outweigh the negative effects, right? Because I already mentioned like I redshirt everybody, and we know that has a negative effect on especially like higher tier recruits wanting to come to your school. And the positional thing, like my 6-man recruiting class should really screw over the next few, but I just kind of try and fight through it by recruiting a few seasons ahead, because I think there's other advantages that come from those things that are worth fighting through. So
Right. Well, I'm sure we'll experience getting heartbroken on a few recruits soon.
I've got to say, if we're on the topic of heartbroken on recruits, I've got to tell my saddest story, which is
It's a perfect time. Yeah.
So here I can maybe share my screen.
Sure.
Real quick and show you my pain, which is. All right, is that working?
The most interesting part. Yep.
Yeah.
So if you look at the top professionals of all time in hardwood, sadly, you're not going to see anybody from my team until pretty far down this list. Though I will say Jeremy Harvey is having quite the early career as a Chicago Bull, but he's not what I'm here to talk about. So Jason Ogden, the number 5 top professional currently in the NBA. A 7-footer who went to Evansville, who was in my division at the time he was being recruited. I put about probably 120 points in, which was like way more than I had ever put in on anybody. And the reason for that is because Jason Ogden is from Huntington, Indiana, and went to North Huntington High School, which is the only high school in Huntington is Huntington North High School, but it's close enough, and it's where I went to high school, that like I've never wanted anything as bad in an online sports game in my life as to have Jason Ogden in my team. When he popped up as a freshman, I probably had 40 points in him like that first season, even though it was messing up my recruiting. So like I was sure I was going to get him, and stupid Evansville. And then they like used him to beat me 5 times in his career too, because Evansville's one of the teams I play in my they're one of my rivals I play every year. I've played the same 4 Indiana teams for a bunch of seasons now, and they're one of them. So every year I had to lose to him like 3 times a season after and if you look, as a member of the Utah Jazz, he is now on 8 straight seasons of averaging 18 points plus in the big leagues, and
double
and 12 rebounds per game for his NBA career. So
Wow.
one of the best hardwood players of all time, from Little Huntington, Indiana, and really didn't want to go to Huntington University. So that's my saddest hardwood story for sure.
I mean,
Oh,
I think
man.
I'd be pretty heartbroken in the same situation, the same high school, same city, all that,
Yep.
and just takes off.
And there are definitely no high quality 7-foot tall basketball players coming from Huntington, Indiana in real life. So it would have been pretty fun, to simulate that there. So, I am recruiting a kid from Huntington this year, which is the only reason I'm recruiting him, because his build isn't as good as some of the other guys I'm for. But once I saw him, I was like, yeah, probably need to do that. So,
Gotta lock up the hometown talent, right?
yeah.
So I think it's a decent time to transition to ask sort of, one, like, what would you say is your team's identity, and how do you really recruit to that? Are there certain things that are mandatory that a player has, certain comments, certain parts of the eval? You mentioned the potential a little bit, but sort of fill out the rest of that kind of profile.
Yeah, and it depends. For me, it depends on which class. And my screen is so dark, I look like I'm in like witness protection or something for this, but oh well. The 4-man class, right? So there's so many different answers to this question, right? Because there's the answer of what do I look for in each position, which is an interesting question, and there's lots of different answers too if you're like on the Discord or the forums. It also depends which recruiting class I'm in, because like I talked about, that 4-man recruiting class, like I'm gonna go for high pot. In my 6-man recruiting class the year after, I know those guys are gonna ride the bench a lot, because they're gonna be stuck behind that 4-man class for the majority of their time. So I go more for like higher starting SI, because I know they're not going to get all the training they should, and I don't worry about pot as much. Also, that's usually like my trash class, which is why my team this year, despite having pretty high TPI, is not performing that well, because it's a bunch of recruits that I didn't care that much about their build. So even though like the SIs are good, they're not really optimal players. So that's definitely one thing, is like pot's something to look out for. But then I think the other question is kind of position by position. And I'm curious to hear your guys' thoughts on this too, for sure. Because I've changed over the year, over the seasons, and there's still some positions that are hard to figure out. So that's an interesting topic for sure. But as far as like a team identity goes, sorry, it took me a while to work my way around to your question. When I was climbing, it was just defense. Like that was all I cared about. Everything else was I'll use tactics and management to try and make up for, hopefully I pick up somebody who develops some shooting along the way and I can put them at high green light. And inside scorers against bad teams, you don't need inside scoring to have big guys score against bad teams in this game. So like, I just recruited defense, and I picked my starting lineups based on defense, right? For most of those seasons, it was pretty much just like, who are my top 3 perimeter defense guys and which one fits the best at each position, and who are my top 2 interior defense guys and which one's taller, they're going to be the center, the next one's going to be the power forward. And that was pretty much how I climbed. Obviously, that doesn't work as well once you hit like, especially like 2 and 1, because teams are more well-rounded and will exploit the weak spots in your lineup. But I think when it's a little harder to recruit, I'd prioritize defense, and it worked for me like all the way up through climbing. I don't know. I think one of the struggles I have right now is I don't know what my team's identity is now, because it's not a specific set, it's not based in skills. It's more, there are definitely attributes I prefer. And I think I always want decent IQ players. I don't know exactly how that factors, but I've done that for a long time and have had a lot of success. So I just keep doing it kind of blindly. But now it's more about trying to figure out how to win at Legends. And some of the stuff I was doing at lower levels isn't working as consistently. And so I'm definitely in a tinkering phase again of trying to figure out what's a consistent strategy that works. And the problem is the stupid teams now adjust to me, right? I can't just set my tactics on something that's working and not look at them the rest of the season and win all the games. Because if I have a heavy inside focus on defense, there are other people paying attention who'll just set their offense to outside, give their shooting guard a green light, and he drops 40 points on me because my team was set on -4 inside defense for 4 games in a row or something like that. That's fun. But, if you want my recommendation for a strategy to climb, defense. Because I think that's where there's consistency in this game. I think if you have good defensive players, they're good every game. I think if you have good offensive players, they're still going to have 2 out of every 8 games that they shoot 3 for 16. And if your team's built around that, you're going to lose some games you'd expect to win. So.
Yeah, I'd say my teams start with defense, definitely. And I've started to really think about length, wingspan and weight a lot more, because a lot of big men are 215, 230 pounds is fine, but I've really noticed when they're 250 pounds or more, they're much tougher to stop, no matter how, not no matter how skilled they are, but it's just really strange. I went up against a 7-foot guy with I think 80 SI, but he had a 7'10" wingspan and he was 260, and he just he didn't kill me, but it caused a lot of problems.
No, and I'll tell you, in the very earliest seasons, weight was even more overpowered than it is now. There was a period where it was really bad and a couple guys figured it out and just they had 6'8", 280-pound point guards who didn't even have that good of skills, and they were just rolling people. And Steve, there was one season, I'm not going to remember exactly when it was, and I wasn't one of the people who figured it out, but there was one season where in the Discord it was Steve, you need to fix the weight thing this off season, and he didn't make a big deal out of it, but we noticed that there was a significantly diminished effect of those teams the next year. But there's a couple things that I think are easy to overlook. And man, my screen's doing all sorts of weird stuff now, but we'll just go with it. There's stuff that's easy to overlook. I think weight is one of those that people don't pay attention to, that matters a lot more than you probably think it does. And for me, especially these recent seasons, the hardest thing to figure out in this game is the impact of speed. And I'm convinced this is one of those, maybe I shouldn't give this away, but I'm not even sure it's true. But for some reason, I have all these things that have happened in this game that are not that explainable unless speed is somehow really important on shooting guards only. I've just when I have those really unexplainable box scores, I've had it a few times where I get killed by this awful shooting guard on the other team. And this happened when I was in lower leagues a few times, where it's some 80 SI, nothing special about him except he's got 18 speed, and he just smashed my 140 SI shooting guard the whole game. It's just what in the world is going on? So And my team right now, my speed has been terrible the last few years. Like overall teams, like there's people who've done like previews of my team in the forums, and the last couple years they're just like, this is brutal. Like you have 4 starters with under 10 speed. How's this going to work? And I had a ton of success. So like speed's the most confusing thing for me, of just like, I've seen evidence that it's like super important, but then I can point to things my own team has done without it that seems like it doesn't matter at all. And so, this is a hard game to figure out for sure. But I believe there's some correlation between shooting guards specifically and speed being really important. And then weight on the big guys, I think, is sort of the hidden stat that can explain some things that seem unexplainable when you're looking at it, that don't make a lot of sense.
I think it would be interesting for us maybe in the future to go position by position and highlight some of the intangibles you look for, some of the things like that you can highlight in sleepers and stuff. We did that a little bit in our last episode, but I think having you here with so much experience recruiting and especially the way you do it, we could maybe do position
And
by
it's
position
such a
breakdown.
hard thing, because especially if you're recruiting pretty far ahead, like you don't know what these guys are going to be, and that's the risk of doing it that way, right?
Mhm.
Like the guys I'm recruiting, the 6 seniors right now, they were, when I started recruiting these guys, they were 60 SI, high school freshmen. And it's not like I have some magic formula to project how they're going to grow. It just gives such an advantage to recruit early that it's like worth risking it a little, that they're not going to turn into exactly what you want. But I think that's also why I was saying I'm struggling with the identity part a little bit now, because when you're recruiting seniors, you know what they are and what they're going to be, and you can kind of tailor your team to fit a mold you want. And so that's kind of the disadvantage of what I'm doing now, is like there's a lot of risk built into what I think this guy is going to become. His random build pattern may not go, that direction, or there may be gaps in it that you don't see when they're newly generated players, so. But yeah, I'd love to go position by position, because that's the part where like I want to know what other people think too, because it's tricky.
Yeah, I think I've noticed with speed, I haven't noticed anything game breaking really, but I've noticed it can help make up for like perimeter defense, or lack thereof. And it also kind of helps with like getting off your shot, that player getting off their shot a lot better, um, if they're a lot faster.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things I wonder about is, to what extent are, because it's hard to know exactly what man-to-man and zone are affecting in the game. But sometimes when I have really high turnover games with like my point guard, shooting guard one game, and then they don't have the same trouble moving the ball around the next game, and you look at the opposing players and like they're pretty similar, sometimes speed is the gap there too. So I think it probably factors into a ton of different calculations in the back end of the game, that speed's probably a factor in a lot of different things. And I don't know which skills are most important, but I think similarly, like with weight and height and some of those things, similar to speed, they may not be the heaviest weighted thing in any of those individual calculations in the game, but they probably factor into a ton of them. And so, it may be hard to gauge the effect completely of what it's doing, but sum total, it's doing a lot.
Absolutely, yeah.
I think that's a pretty concise way to put it, actually. I think it might be interesting in the future just to touch on that idea where we talked about sort of position by position breakdown. I think it'd be really cool in the future if we got a couple guys on at the same time and everybody just spitballed and we just started, talking about it.
I'm not on the. I love the Discord and I check it a lot. I'm not like the biggest poster on there, but a few months ago, I just went on because I was going nuts, and I was like, can anyone tell me, like, what is a small forward build in this game, right? Like, I have no idea, and I've seen successful teams with like completely, and maybe that's just the answer, is like, it's not one answer, but the wide range of answers I got was all over the place, and it just depends who you're talking to, and probably depends a little, like you guys are talking about, like team identity, guys have had success with something and what they're having success with. overall as a team, their small forwards they like are probably going to fit that model, where the other 4 positions, you're a little more restricted in what you can even kind of start with there.
Yeah, that's true. That's a really good point. That's a really good point.
And my small forwards have always just been, I recruit too many shooting guards. And so, my 5th best player is always my, shooting guard who wasn't good enough to start. But it's not so much because I strategize that way. It's just because that's my best, it's because I wasn't paying enough attention in recruiting. And I have too many guys who are like 6'2" to 6'4" with speed and shooting. And they're enough better than the other available players that's just who I end up starting. But I'm not sure that makes them and the other problem is the guys I recruit to be small forwards, I always end up putting them somewhere else because I try to, like, the small forwards I target are always guys who are like really multi-skilled and not specialists of one thing, which means when I have a gap somewhere, they're my best option to fill the gap. So there's probably 3 guys ever I've recruited specifically as like, this is going to be a small forward. And then they always end up as a point guard or a power forward because I missed on somebody else. So.
Yeah, fair point. Well, Bridger, we've been talking for like exactly an hour now, so I think this might make for a pretty convenient time to cut it. But thank you so much for coming on. I think we learned so much, obviously, just from 1 hour, and you're a really good interview. So I think, we definitely look forward to having you on the podcast in the future if you're down for that.
Love it. It would be a blast. Obviously, as you guys can tell, I like thinking about and talking about the game. It's been a good daily distraction for several years now, to sink my teeth into. I refrained from like taking you guys through the like 20-page Excel spreadsheet I use to manage my hardwood life.
You are speaking directly to me right now.
So I have, recruiting classes mapped out for several seasons and projected SIs for all of them. And then I track my own stats, because one of the things that hardwood needs is just to keep track of total stats for players. So yeah, I have this big mess of an Excel sheet that I would be fun to talk about sometime too, probably, because one of the things I have in there that, again, I want other people's opinions on is I try to like rate players by position, but it's all my own arbitrary weights on each skill. And I'm sure some of them are really bad and that I'm misjudging players by position badly. So anyway,
I kind of did that for big men for a little bit. Yeah.
Oh yeah. No, like I've gone through phases where like height is like 30% of what I'm judging the big guys on, just because it seems like none of the other stuff matters. And then other times where I've veered back a long way from that. So anyway, thank you guys for having me on. Absolute blast to talk. Love that you guys are doing this. Keep doing it. I'll keep watching. If you happy to come on and chat about a specific topic or anything anytime. So, but thank you guys. This has been an exciting thing the last few weeks.
Sweet. Thank you again. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And like I said, we'll make sure to get you on in the future.
Sounds great.
For everybody out there in the hardwood universe, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, discuss in the Discord. Let us know if you want to be one of the guests of the future. And like we suggested, maybe have a roundtable of guys and spitball on some ideas. We're definitely open to all those ideas. So just hit us up, let us know if you guys have any suggestions or anything like that. But otherwise, signing off for the TPI podcast show, it's Robert, Andrew, and Bridger bringing you an hour of great content. We'll see you guys this weekend.